Hi everyone, welcome to Mindgasms. So, I'm going to do another video in my series that I'm doing on the Stoic philosopher Epictetus's book called The Art of Living, which is basically just a compilation of his writings that was created posthumously. And I'm going to go right into the maxim here, which is no shame, no blame. And I'm going to start off and just read this entire maxim here, and then we'll go into it a little bit more. And so I'm going to start off with what I put for the thumbnail here, which is basically the lesson of this is supposed to be doing the opposite of what Anna Kasparian and Jimmy Dore did against each other, and Steven Crowder and Sam Cedar as well. And so obviously this is the opposite of the no shame, no blame principle, right? Because it's all about YouTuber drama. And I think that this maxim of Epictetus, no shame, no blame, is really important today for our internet culture with YouTuber drama and people dunking on each other on Twitter, because it's obviously all about pointing fingers and shaming other people and blaming them. So yeah, I'm just going to start off by just reading the maxim, and then, like I said, we'll get into it more. Okay. If it is our feelings about things that torment us rather than the things themselves, it follows that blaming others is silly. Therefore, when we suffer setbacks, disturbances, or grief, let us never place the blame on others, but on our own attitudes. Small-minded people habitually reproach others for their misfortunes. Average people reproach themselves. Those who are dedicated to a life of wisdom understand that the impulse to blame something or someone is foolishness, that there is nothing to be gained in blaming, whether it be others or oneself. One of the signs of the dawning of moral progress is the gradual extinguishment of blame. We see the futility of finger-pointing. The more we examine our attitudes and work on ourselves, the less we are apt to be swept away by stormy emotional reactions in which we seek easy explanations for unbidden events. Things simply are what they are. Other people think what they will think. It is of no concern to us. No shame, no blame. All right. So again, I think this is a really great maxim. And again, the ancient Greek Stoics, like Epictetus, of which he was far from the only one, of course, had some really great life lessons that are still just as applicable today as they were back then, like 2,500 or 3,000 years ago, basically. And so I'm going to go to, so to start off with, why is it doing that? Sorry, just a sec. I opened the wrong thing. Okay, so to start off with, we can go a little bit into Epictetus himself here. So as I said, Epictetus was a Stoic philosopher, and he was in the time of ancient Greece. And the Stoics were one of the first major ancient Greek schools of thought. And it kind of, well, first there was basically Platonism and the schools of Plato and Socrates. And then after that, there was the Aristotelian or Peripatetic school. And then there were basically the skeptics, and the Stoics, and the Epicureans. And the Epicureans and the Stoics are basically pitted against each other all the times, because this is an oversimplification and a straw man, but like critics of the Epicureans saw them as basically hedonists, although Epicurus himself basically said, expressed the sentiment that no, it's not about just like being lazy and sitting on your ass drinking wine all day. It's about drinking enough wine to feel good and socialize with your friends, but not getting so drunk that you are hungover and feel like shit the next day. It's about long, sustainable, lasting happiness. It's not about just pure hedonism and enjoying every moment as much as possible without thinking about future consequences. And Stoics, they basically thought that pursuing the natural order of things is a better way to live life. And I don't agree with all of their principles because they were rationalists basically, and I used to be a rationalist, but I'm not anymore. But they had some really meaningful and useful life advice, like this maxim that I'm talking about: no shame, no blame. And as I said, I think that's really needed in today's world because, like I said, especially in our internet culture, we've become so tribal with pointing fingers at each other and blaming others for our problems without addressing them ourselves. And it's just basically counterproductive because all it does is add to our stress, right? So it doesn't make problems any better when people like Steven Crowder and Sam Cedar or Anna Kasparian and Jimmy Dore just make endless videos intellectually shitting all over each other and blame each other for this stupid fucking drama that they're all about. So, like I said, Epictetus is I forgot to mention then another interesting thing that sort of inspired Epictetus's Stoicism supposedly was that he was born as a slave and then he became freed and eventually became this really famous philosopher. So this book that I'm talking about, as I mentioned before, is called The Art of Living, the Classical Manual on Virtue, Happiness, and Effectiveness. And, Stoics were all about virtue and pursuing happiness and effectiveness. And basically the reason that Epictetus it is all about the maxim no shame, no blame is partially because it will take away from your happiness, like I said, right? Like if you're just obsessing over shaming people or shaming yourself, as he says in the maxim too, if you're just all obsessed with being depressed all the time because you're shitting all over yourself in your head and you're just depressive and pessimistic about everything and you're catastrophizing, that's just as bad as pointing fingers at other people and blaming others for your problems without ever trying to pursue self-improvement or anything like that, right? Both of those types of things, pointing fingers at others or back at yourself all the time, are totally counterproductive for your happiness. So unless like YouTubers are just like grifting, and I'm not saying those people are, maybe some of them are, like maybe Steven Crowder and Sam Cedar are grifters. I think that's kind of likely, but I don't think Jimmy Dore and Anna Kasparian are grifters. But anyway, for the people who are not grifters, it's just going to make them more unhappy if they're just making endless videos shaming other people, right? Like this is a good illustration of shame here. Like, don't look at me. It reminds me of this book by the journalist John Ronson called So You've Been Publicly Shamed. It's about public shaming, especially in our Twitter culture. It's about the famous case, I forget infamous case. I forget what the woman's name was, but she said something like mildly, debatably racist in a tweet, and then she went on a plane, and when she got off the plane, she had been canceled on the internet, and she even lost her fucking job over it, or some shit like that. So shame and blame relates to cancel culture too, right? Because if you're shaming and blaming other people, then you're gonna call for their cancellation too, right? So so cancel culture is all about shaming people and pointing fingers at them too. And shaming people and pointing fingers at others this is an important aspect of this rule. Not only is it counterproductive to the happiness of the people you want to hurt if you shame and blame them and try to cancel people, it's also counterproductive to your own happiness because, and part of that is this old anachronism, which is if you point one finger at someone else, there are several other fingers pointing back at you, right? And that's a good image here for that exact right there. But that could just be a whole bunch of people shaming you, right? Like that Twitter thing with that woman. People were saying fucking terrible shit to her, like giving her death threats and talking about cutting off her head and shitting down her neck and fucking terribly violent shit. So this is like the most minor version, this picture right here, of what shame can feel like, right? Because sometimes public shamings have, like, I'm sure this doesn't occur often, but sometimes public shamings can literally lead to people fucking killing themselves, right? So that's why instead of shaming and blaming people, it's better to pursue self-improvement, because when you pursue self-improvement, it leads to moral progress and increases your happiness, basically, is what Epictetus would say. Because when you're focusing on making yourself better instead of focusing on your problems, then you're not dwelling on everything. This is an exaggeration, of course. It's kind of hyperbolic. Attitude is everything. That's not totally true, of course. There are like systemic issues with the world, and there are people, like, if someone runs over someone with their car, obviously if they like killed you, you can't bring yourself back to life if you have the proper fucking attitude or something like that, right? So attitude isn't everything, but attitude is really important. And since I myself tend to be kind of depressive and pessimistic naturally, I try to remind myself of this all the time too, that it's important to have a more positive attitude. And that's why I care a lot about self-improvement too, because if I focus on making myself a better person, then I'm not focusing on all of my flaws all the time and all of the different ways in which I feel like I'm a failure or something like that. And then I can just, like, focus on my creative pursuits or workouts or meditate or smoke weed or like all of these things can have synergistic effects on each other. And, I can make friends with people. And on the YouTube channel here, I have lots of great conversations with people all the time. And one area where I'm more critical of Stoicism than I used to be, though, is this next area that I'll talk about, which is morality. Because as some of you who watch my channel know, I talk about post-structuralists or postmodernists all the time and I've mentioned this 1,000 times, but contrary to popular misconceptions, no, post-structuralists and postmodernists like Foucault and Derrida were not fucking moral relativists. They were not. They were moral pluralists, saying, like, people have moral compasses naturally, but they change across time throughout history depending on what culture you're a part of and your upbringing, which is a pretty obvious sociological truth when you think about it, right? But anyway, I think there is some merit to Epictetus's belief that if instead of pointing fingers at others and blaming yourself, you focus on self-improvement, it increases your happiness. And if you focus on self-improvement rather than pointing at shaming and blaming people, then it leads to moral progress. You're morally superior if you are pursuing self-improvement than you are if you're pointing fingers at people and blaming yourself and dwelling in your mistakes and your problems and flaws. Again, I don't necessarily agree with that, but even, let's say, from a pragmatic perspective, it's good to aspire to that mindset, to consider it morally superior if you avoid, just for yourself, if you avoid blaming others and yourself as much as you can, and focus on self-improvement instead of just wallowing in your own suffering, which is an important lesson, like I said, that we could use particularly today in our modern internet culture, right? Because we're getting all depressed and pointing fingers at other people, a lot of us anyway, and getting caught up in stupid fucking drama instead of pursuing self-improvement and trying to become happier by pursuing self-improvement instead of shaming and blaming others. And that's why another aspect of this maxim, no shame, no blame, that I like from Epictetus is his talk of wisdom. So basically, another piece of this maxim, no shame, no blame, that he talks about is that if instead of shaming and blaming others and pointing fingers at people and like insulting yourself in your mind all day long because you're obsessed with all the ways that you suffer and all the ways that you fuck up and make mistakes and all the ways that you hurt people without meaning to, if instead of doing all that and thinking all about how you're a fuck up all the time and thinking about how other people are assholes, you focus on self-improvement, improving your mind and body and being smarter and being kinder to others, this leads to moral progress, and it also leads to wisdom, because it's true wisdom when you understand that it's a much better use of your time to try to, just engage in creative pursuits or try to improve your body or try to improve your friendships with people, or maybe like a relationship with your significant other or someone you want to date or something like that. Those are way better things to spend your time on than shaming and blaming yourself and others, which is kind of like an obvious truth. And I think post-structuralists like Foucault and Derrida would agree that this is true, like in like the sense of that it's true that these things are good to pursue for your own happiness if you don't want to be fucking wallowing in depression and angry at people all the time. I think Foucault and Derrida would agree with Epictetus on this too, that you can gain more wisdom if you focus on self-improvement rather than shaming and blaming others and pointing fingers at others and yourself all the time and wallowing in your own suffering and all that sort of terrible shit, right? So yeah, and this is a good image here that I'll show for, well, this is just a little image here for self-improvement, which I think is a good one here. So yeah, again, I'll just go back to the main point here. Pursue self-improvement, right? That's a really fucking good idea. So yeah, anyway, this is a little bit of a shorter one here, so that's good. It's a fairly simple maxim, but it's very, very important. I know I like to focus on like really abstract philosophy again all the time because this intellectual masturbation fascinates me, just getting all deep theoretical and stuff that doesn't apply that much to the real world, although some of it does, like, Foucault talking about how people are imprisoned by their categories like homosexual and heterosexual, etc. And how Derrida talks about how, language changes and people get obsessed over language changing, but it's ultimately a good thing to oversimplify their positions on some things. But yeah, anyway, so no shame, no blame. Shit happens. Get over it. And instead of thinking about how much you fuck up all the time and getting angry at people for hurting you, try to improve yourself and, work out more and get smarter, learn more, read books, get better relationships with people, make more friends, and yeah, pursue self-improvement instead of shaming and blaming others, and that will lead to moral progress, more happiness, and more true wisdom. Yeah, so do what Epictetus says. Shit happens. No shame, no blame. All right. So, thanks to those of you for watching this next Epictetus video from The Art of Living. I'm going to keep going through some of his maxims here. There are so many useful maxims. I'm not as big, like I said, I'm not as big of a fan of Stoicism as I used to, but it's still extremely very useful advice for helping us to live better lives, attain more wisdom, and be more happy, and just make the world a better place with the more that all of us can do this, even though we all succumb to, Twitter drama and dunking on each other on Twitter and YouTuber drama and yelling at people because, they moved our glass of water, or, thinking about how we haven't applied for that job that we've been wanting to apply for. But just remember, no shame, no blame. So yeah, thanks for watching this. And like I said, look forward to that next maxim that I'm going to do. And this weekend will be our movie chat with Dusty and Shizan and Chris. And actually, it looks like Jared from Wisecrack will hopefully and probably be joining us for that as well. So look forward to that too. That'll either be on Saturday or Sunday. Don't know for sure yet, but you'll see when it's scheduled. And so, yeah, thanks to everyone for watching. Subscribe, click the like button, share everywhere. Click that Patreon link if you want to give me money once a month on Patreon. I greatly appreciate that more than anything else. And someone pointed out to me that I had the wrong link there, so thanks. I forget what your name was, so thanks for pointing that out. So I put the correct link there now. And yeah, like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And no shame, no blame. All right. Thanks again, everyone, and adios until next time.